I mean, I don't even know why they call it fucking plain tubey, but you know.
I now know just not to talk at the start of the episode if you're wrong, because I know. So it was going to be, hello everyone, welcome back to Science Podcast today, episode 102 here as me, Jono, and Owen. Sorry, I'm so used to saying me and Jono. Me, Jono, and Owen are here to talk about Vincent and the Doctor, amongst other things.
This is like the 4th or 5th episode in a row that I've been on.
It does.
I've got a real run going here because we got this, and we got like the Bond one before it, and then you had your 2-part 100-parter, and then I think it was Tennant and Tate before that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Shooty Gatwas, that's 6.
Didn't you do Doctor Strange in the middle of those?
Might have done.
I think Doctor Strange came out after Shooty Gatwa and then Tennant and Tate. So yeah, this is like my 5th episode in a row.
We'll do a quick VAR. You guys entertain the viewers quickly.
Yeah, this is going to be brilliant for the podcast listeners as a man looks something up on a list.
So Doctor Strange. It was Doctor Strange before Shooty Gatwa.
Okay, fair enough.
So we are getting a little bit of streak going here.
Six quick episodes in a row. I mean, we're spoiling you people, basically.
Good form. Yeah, so here to talk about Vincent. Doctor Strange. No, Vincent and Doctor. Obviously back with our monthly Doctor Who reviews. They're back. Everyone get excited. And this one, sorry for those people that like to see one of us go off on something, because it's very unlikely there's going to be much, if any, negativity within this episode at all. So, yeah, come back next month for the Capaldi Dalek 2-parter, because that one could get a bit fruity. But this week, it's going to be quite positive. But first, I want to start off with a bit of negativity, unfortunately, as the world always makes us do such. Because it's been unfortunate to hear. Obviously, Kenobi or Obi-Wan Kenobi has come out, and unfortunately,
that's not unfortunate. It's brilliant.
No. That's fine. Okay, but there has been some unfortunate racism thrown at the cast, to the point where even Ewan McGregor himself has had to come out and for a video, and it does just. But we've even seen it with Ncuti Gatwa and in other people cast recently. When will this stop? People, when can we just stop being idiots, please, and just accept people for who they are, and no matter,
it is full credit to Ewan McGregor that he came out and released a statement as he did. It kind of makes you wonder why, when you get people talk about diversity hires in Doctor Who and stuff like that, you don't get people high up in either Doctor Who production or even Jodie or someone coming out and making a similar statement. It makes you realise the difference between staying silent and making a stand. And I hope that sets a standard in future for what television companies, be it Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, all of the MCU, all of these franchises seem to have these little incel pockets of fandom that will spout this right-wing bollocks at points. He is hoping that actually it shows others the way to deal with it. You don't brush it under the carpet. You actually address it head on. You actually sit there and say, if you express these attitudes, you are not considered by me to be a fan of this franchise.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just a shame that we live in a world where this happens, and from what I know, she's very good in it anyway.
She's excellent. I know you're not a big Star Wars fan. I know we've already discussed this. What I would say, Alex, is if you're going to give one of these shows a go, make it this one, because actually this isn't very lore heavy. All you really need to do is to have seen the prequels and the main trilogy, and it does not rely on seeing the other things. And it's 3 episodes in. It's superb, and I think it's only 6 episodes, so it's not too much to commit to either. But yeah, for a casual viewer or a casual fan, I think it's perfect. I expect you would enjoy it.
Yeah, I will. I'll probably give it a go once it's all out. I'll wait and then I'll binge it probably because I've done enough. I've done enough to avoid spoilers at the minute, so I'm doing okay.
Yeah. I mean, apparently there was a massive spoiler doing the rounds today, which I haven't seen, but I know a few people have. You know, today you had quite a was quite a big episode, so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, as we found out ourselves over the last week, Alex, unfortunately, fandom can have these little pockets of people that are very unpleasant to anybody who is different.
I mean, the first time, again, it's very rare. I'm only kind of joined the social media world very recently, obviously doing lockdown stuff. But the first time I first saw it and I was baffled was only like really, really baffled was like last year at the Euros in the final when there was lots of racial abuse thrown at our boys who had taken the penalty. And I think it was one of them even come out and said when we we're doing all the training before we took that kick, we were England players. After we took that kick, we were black. It's just like,
I mean, the really horrible thing about that is, you know, as somebody who's been a football fan for 30 odd years and who's quite well versed in social media, unfortunately, I could tell exactly what was going to happen the minute they missed.
Yeah.
You know, it was that predictable. It was that inevitable. And it shows that it's not really a problem with fandoms as such. It's a problem with societies. But society is not going to deal with that in a whole. So every little as a whole, so every little pocket of society, every little club, every little fandom, every little organisation, every little interest group has to self-police.
Yeah,
we have to self-police. And sometimes if you self-police, you find yourself the target of things, as we both have in recent days.
Yeah, that was.
I don't want to get into that because it's done and dusted. But you know, we both waded in to support a couple of friends who are marginalised. You know, they're both disabled. One's a young woman, and we got a backlash for it. And you know, it you know, that went on for about 3 days. But it's kind of unfortunately, it's the price you pay for loyalty. It's the price you pay for sticking up for your buddies and sticking up for your friends and doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pain in the absolute arse. But on the positive note, it is Pride Month, so happy Pride to everyone. On the show as well. Next month we're Disability Pride Month, so we'll be selling the shit out of that. We'll be making sure that that flag is everywhere as well.
I'm absolutely confident that every brand and company that is doing something for Pride this month will be doing just as much for Disability Pride next month.
Yes. I bloody well hope. If not, we'll be doing it anyway.
I'm really confident.
Yeah, we are very confident.
I'm really confident.
Well,
you know that I'm conscious we're on audio as well, so you know, just for the podcast listeners, that's the sound of me winking.
Yeah, cookies.
I mean, you know, if the Who Shop did it last year, you know, we like to set an example.
Oh yeah, the Who Shop did it last year, and Friends of Ace did it last year. But you both did it because I turned around and went, "This is a pride flag. It'd be great when people did it." And you, you know, brilliantly, you went, "Yeah, let's do it." Unfortunately, I also had people coming at me last year accusing me of appropriating pride.
Like, pride was that whole thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, pride's a fucking concept. You know, like you. How can any one group own pride? You know, unless you're the Lions.
Yes. Jesus Christ.
What have we done today to make you feel proud?
Yes, if you have jumped on the show from the 100th episode, because I know some people have started watching, especially on the audio platforms, then this is how the series works. Essentially, every month for the past almost year, me, John, and Owen have been putting Doctor episodes as a randomizer. At the end of every episode, we pick out the subsequent episode. Well, technically, the subsequent episode is already announced, and the one after that is announced as well. So we already know next.
It's going to be a year because it was June last year that we did the Time Meddler.
Yeah, exactly. So this is it. Jesus Christ, that must have been the last. This be the last podcast I filmed as a 20-year-old as well. So yeah, age.
No, it was just after.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, we recorded that. We recorded that on a day that I got back from the eye hospital, and the Euros were on. I think it was a couple of days after Dragonfire. So it was like the 14th of June.
Wait, we recorded it on the day of the Euros.
Well, the Euros were on. The Euros take 4 months.
Oh yeah, good.
Or 4 weeks, rather.
Good point. Good point.
Feels like 4 months. She's got them back.
Yeah. But yeah, this month is Vincent the Doctor. Like I said, it's going to be really very positive. But John, I'm going to obviously I do love it, even though you don't your breakdowns. But do we need to do it this week? Do we need to?
I'm happy to do it this week. I've actually gone and researched the 3 or 4 words I had to remember how to pronounce.
Okay.
I remembered how to pronounce. It'll be brief, but people,
audio listeners.
So my breakdown. So the Doctor and Amy go to the Muséum d'Orsay in France to go to look at a exhibition of Vincent van Gogh's work. Whilst looking at the 1890 painting, The Church of Auvers, the Doctor spots a monster in the window of the church. So he decides to take Amy back to Auvers in 1890 to go to visit Vincent van Gogh and find out, to quote Alex Kingdom, what the fuck is going on. They meet Vincent outside a bar where he's having a fight with the bar patron. It's quite clear that the local villagers don't like him very much. So they have a drink with Vincent. While they're having a drink with Vincent, a local girl is murdered, and Vincent is basically blamed for the murder because of his mental illness. They go back to Vincent's apartment where they have like various long, deep conversations. The Doctor realizes that the monster is man looks something up on the internet while he's trying
to... A
Crephaeus, yes. I was going to say Casaven, but that's something else. It's a Crephaeus. So the Doctor realizes that the monster is a Crephaeus. It's a monster that is invisible. So they go back to the Church of Auvers, where Vincent paints the church, whilst the Doctor goes inside the hunt for the invisible monster with a little device involving mirrors. Amy goes in after him. Vincent then goes in after them. There's a lot of blundering about inside the church. They end up in a different room of the church, at which point the Doctor realizes that because the Crephaeus is feeling its way around the outside of the room, the Crephaeus is actually blind. A struggle then ensues because Vincent can see the monster and they can't. A struggle then ensues during which the Crephaeus is impaled upon Vincent's easel and accidentally killed, which devastates Vincent, absolutely devastates him. Amy and the Doctor are about to leave, but the Doctor then decides to take Vincent forward to contemporary day, to the Muséum d'Orsay to see the impact of his work, because Vincent is completely convinced that he's a rubbish painter and that nobody will ever appreciate or buy his paintings. Don't forget, this is a man who sold 1 painting in his lifetime. He goes there where they meet the wonderful museum curator, Dr. Black, played uncredited by Bill Nye, who the Doctor asks to describe Vincent in 100 words. Dr. Black describes Vincent as not only the greatest artist of all time, but probably one of the greatest humans to ever live, which completely emotionally overwhelms Vincent. He kisses the Doctor, he hugs Dr. Black. They take him back to 1890, where he's almost a new man. He has a new lease of life. He has a confidence. He has a belief that his paintings will sell and that he's not going to kill himself. His demons will not beat him. They then return to the Muséum d'Orsay, where Amy is expecting to see hundreds of new paintings from a Vincent who didn't kill himself in his 30s. The Doctor seems far less convinced, and it's revealed that Vincent did indeed still commit suicide. The only changes that seem to have taken place are the fact that the Crephaeus is no longer in the window of the Church of Auvers painting, and that on one of the sunflowers paintings, the Vincent has now written for Amy on the vase. And that's basically, in a nutshell, the story.
Yeah, wonderfully said, John.
See you
next week, yeah. I'm going to start this off by saying that obviously we recently did the Doctor Who poll of Doctor Who episodes, ranking them from worst to best. Every single, 9 of the contributors in the podcast were in that poll. if it was just me, this would have been in the top 5 without question. This is one of my favorite episodes. I can watch it again and again and again without fail.
Yeah, this is also in my all-time top 5. I think when I did the list on the Metabilis website thing a couple of years ago, I think it came out 5th. And if I were doing that today, it might even be a little higher.
Yeah, it's perfect. Owen, what are your thoughts?
It's one of those stories that I've seen so many times, and it's just sort of like the ending is like gets you every single time. It's that sort of like emotional impact of it, and it's they seem to have picked the right sort of tone of music, because it's sort of like the scene, the music, it all just sort of like builds into one, and it sort of clutches at your heartstrings. And yeah, it's definitely up there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just, I think one thing for me, obviously, we'll break it down and we'll go into things. But I think for me, what I realized watching it today was that this episode is some of my favorite lines of dialogue in any episode of Doctor Who. Obviously, it's written by the fabulous Richard Curtis, so it's very snappy, very quick, very witty in aspects as well, because to the heartstrings. But there are just some lines of dialogue in this that absolutely fill me with joy and at the same time break my heart.
It has my favorite line in 60 years of the show. Which is towards at the end when the Doctor says, the way I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things. The good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't necessarily spoil the good things or make them unimportant. And I think that is such a realistic message for life. And that is the Doctor talking to a companion in a time of trauma and a time of crisis, and just being the Doctor and just consoling them. And I think those moments, for me, across Doctor Who, those moments are the best ones, the ones where actually somebody is having a crisis and the Doctor takes them under his wing. It reminds me of the scene with Joe in The Time Monster, where Pertwee's talking about his darkest day and the daisiest daisy and things like that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think one lines that again, there's so many brilliant ones that stick out, but I think one for me is as well, I think it sums up life quite well as any human being, is when Vincent says to the Doctor, we have fought monsters together, but I fear together I fear by myself I might not do as well. It's like things like that where you go, you feel comfortable when you're with somebody, but you fear the unknown, you fear the loneliness. And I have to say, normally I praise Matt Smith. I'm going to praise Matt Smith. But Tony Curran is the MVP of this episode. He brings it to life perfectly.
We went through this the other week. It's Curran.
You did. I listened back. I listened to. I genuinely. I listened
to it yesterday.
Yes, Tony Curran. Sorry, is perfect. Clearly not good enough for you to remember his name or pronounce it correctly. No, he's brilliant as Vincent. And that scene when he's in the bedroom and he's obviously heard that little bit where the Doctor goes, "We'll be out your hair tomorrow," and you just see him drop, and you go in and you get that really emotional scene where he's like, everybody leaves eventually, and the Doctor goes, "Oh, come on, we got to look on the bright side." He's like, "Well, you clearly have not completed your experience." It's just. He brings that joy of Vincent, but also that sadness.
And his blatant flirting with Amy is brilliant as well. And the fact that he picks up that there's something up with Amy, because obviously this is the point where Rory has died, but Amy's had her memory wiped and doesn't remember him. And the fact that Vincent is so perceptive to pick up that actually she has lost somebody, even though she doesn't remember it. And there's lots of funny little lines in there as well, where obviously Tony Curran plays Vincent with a Scottish accent, And he asks Amy if she's Dutch too.
Yeah.
which is just wonderful.
Yeah, it's also really weird because a lot of people, the townsfolk have like sort of like Somerset accents as well, which is an interesting stylistic choice.
It's set in France. They filmed it in Croatia. He's meant to be from Holland. She's meant to be from Scotland. Why shouldn't they have Somerset accents?
From start to finish, it's one of those episodes that changes its emotional direction very quickly, but it doesn't feel jaded or out of place. It can go from being funny 1 minute to sad the next, to being hopeful, to being, down. It can be an action episode. It can be it can be a comedy. And it does it effortlessly. It's a lot. I think it's perfect.
It is perfection. It is perfection. You cannot improve on it. And quite often when we talk about that, it results in sort of a short podcast because there's not much more to say. But actually, I think there's quite a lot to say about this one. It's quite deep as well. There's quite a lot to kind of, there's a lot of metaphor and analogy in there. The fact that they are fighting an invisible monster whilst Vincent is fighting an invisible monster. The fact that the monster is blind and is attacking people randomly, and the fact that depression can affect people in the same way, just randomly. You can't predict who it's going to affect. There's a lot to unpack in there. Because I was having a conversation. I was having a conversation with somebody the other night, and they were sort of saying that they hadn't seen it in a while, and they weren't sure sort of how much of the mental health messaging that people get from this was intentional. And I think when you rewatch it and you look at those very specific analogies, it's quite clear what the intentions were. It's quite clear how cleverly this has been done.
It's kind of the perfect Doctor Who episode, whilst also not feeling like a Doctor Who episode at the same time. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
It's wonderful in that it's an episode of Doctor Who that, if anything, feels almost independent of any other Doctor Who episodes ever.
It's unlike anything else. I mean, you look at the fact that Vincent is demonized by the village because of his depression, and that this is set, 130 years ago. And that actually, even today, people are demonized for their mental health conditions. People are demonized for their neurodivergence. People with depression are often feared, often not trusted. It's often treated as danger. It's got so much to say about that. And, it's that thing of everybody will talk about disability rights and looking after people and mental health awareness. When somebody's actually faced with somebody that's going through a crisis or that's going through a depressive episode, that's when you find out how much people actually care. That's when you find out how much people actually are invested in that. And it's not just platitudes, because so many people will just back off at that point. And I think that's the real message here, that the Doctor and Amy don't back off. That they're there for, that our heroes are there for Vincent when the rest of the village isn't. When the rest of the village considers him to be a pain in the arse and a danger, they embrace him and they show him love. And I mean, we've not talked about it, but the scene where they're staring up at the stars and the Doctor says, and it's another great line, but it's something along the lines of, I've seen so many wonderful things, but I wish I could see the world as you did. And it's stunning. Absolutely stunning. And I don't think that any other Doctor could have pulled that off. I think it needed like the childlike innocence of Matt Smith in series 5. So not even later Matt Smith. I think it needed the childlike innocence of Matt Smith in that first series to just embrace somebody in Vincent's situation and help him. rather than being wary. And I think that's part of the reason why. Yeah, Tony Curran steals the show, but this wouldn't work without early Matt Smith being the Doctor. It wouldn't work. As much as I love him, it wouldn't work with Capaldi. It wouldn't work with Pertwee. It's that we're going to go with this guy and we're going to love him and go on an adventure with him. And you only really get that with Series 5 Matt Smith.
Yeah. This is one of the episodes, like you said, John, it's one of the reasons I love Matt. That's why he's my Doctor. He exudes that childlike energy, but also has this amazing empathy that can only come with age at the same time. Yeah. Like he even says, I'm getting old, I'm getting really old, because he starts to miss certain things about the Crephaeus later on in the episode. But yeah, he has this 10 minutes ago, he was too busy moaning because it took Vincent a few hours to paint a paint. And it's some of the funniest stuff in the story,
Oh, it is.
The device. Like didn't you get the device from like a smelly godmother or something like that?
Yeah, a godmother with really bad breath, I think is the line. I think it's like a really bad breath.
Yeah.
He's like a toddler that's been dragged along on a fishing trip or something. He just wants to, I want to go and play. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Obviously as well, because I don't think we've done a Matt Smith one on here for a while. Have we done a Matt Smith story in the series before? Am I being?
We did 11th Hour, didn't we?
We did 11th Hour. Yes, we did. So this is actually technically the first time. We see my TARDIS again, which is nice because I've not. I always like seeing that series 5/6/7A TARDIS, the Pond's TARDIS, because it's the best one, in my opinion.
And the way that Vincent takes that in as well is very good. He doesn't have that kind of bewilderment of it. It's almost like he kind of walks in, looks around, takes it in, and then just takes a look on the outside, and he's like, okay.
Yeah, I love when he goes.
I want Funko or somebody to actually release a figure of that TARDIS, of the 1890 TARDIS with all of the flyers around the outside of it. I just want that. I want one of those.
That's also another really good line as well, because at that point Vincent also says, and I'm the one who's mad. It's just like it's brilliant. She walks in, but no, it's so good. You get certain things as well, like him discussing the sunflower, and suddenly how I've never seen a man more perfect, more intrinsically discuss a sunflower before. It's like life, but at the same time it's like death. It's kind of disgusting. It's like
yeah.
It's wonderful.
I want to the episode also looks beautiful. The cinematography on this is exceptional. The daylight scenes are almost like a kind of sepia.
Yeah.
And the nighttime scenes are so vibrant and vivid. Yeah. And it's almost like it was painted with an artist's palette. It looks stunning.
Even the scene with the cafe, even though like we all know, the painting, and then when they pull the image down, and then it just literally just glows, in the evening air, and it's just visually stunning.
People talk about how great the Chibnall era looks, and yes, it does. But nothing has ever looked as good as this episode looks.
Yeah, I'd say this one, or even I think the 50th looks wonderful. What I was going to,
yeah,
I think, and also
I'd take this because it's more colourful.
Shout out to Rachel Talala as well, because she's back and she does a really good job making everything look wonderful. So yeah. I want to quickly talk on something that we rarely talk about on episodes. Sometimes we touch on it very briefly, but this is an episode where Murray's music shines. I mean, I think it's just the track that's called. I think it's just called Vincent on the soundtrack. Yeah. Is amazing. Obviously Murray is a magician when it comes to making soundtrack, but I don't think there's ever a better. Like some people say, his Gallifrey theme is really it's brilliant. But his Vincent theme shines with upbeating tones, and then it's dark tones as well, and the sadness. It perfectly highlights the man. And it's rare that I can say that specifically about one piece of music. I can say it throughout the episode, but it's rare that one actual track on its own can manage to do that. And he somehow managed that with Vincent.
I think that Series 5 as a whole is Murray's masterpiece. Yep. I think it's, it's a Series 5 soundtrack as a whole is Murray's masterpiece. He's a forte. He's absolutely on fire here. Throughout the season, and particularly in this episode.
I've
also got to say, this for me also contains the best usage of pop music in a Doctor Who episode. Yeah. When they're playing Chances by Athlete across the second Museum d'Orsay scene, it's just the perfect use of music, but also the most perfect use of kind of sound leveling, the way that it comes in and out. It's beautiful.
Yeah, because also they do a really smart thing where they do mix it with some piece of soundtrack as well, which is really smart, because you have the lyrics of the song, but also in the background they slowly fade in some of Murray's music to kind of go succinctly along with it, and it works wonderfully.
Yeah, it's stunning.
I can't. I'm talking to that later on. That scene on its own later on, properly in details, can be difficult. But I want to also talk about the Crephaeus, because I think this is possibly the most underrated monster in Doctor Who history. And it's rare I say that, but other people go, the Crephaeus didn't really do anything, did it? It was kind of pointless. It was just there because they needed one. But as you said, John, no, there is a purpose to it, and it's not. It's very beautiful in the messaging.
There is a purpose to it. I mean, it's established in the episode that the Crephaeus are a herd animal. It's established in the episode that this Crephaeus is blind. This is basically an animal that has been ditched by its family because it is disabled. And it's wandering around the south of France, scared and frustrated, and there's so much to say there around disability and how disability is treated and how people with disabilities are treated. And there are really obvious comparisons between the monster and what's going on with Vincent.
Yeah.
So it may not practically seem to do much, but I think once you actually think about the episode, once you actually not even analyze it, but once you actually sit and watch it and think about what's going on, it serves such a purpose narratively.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it entirely flips the script, because to start with, you're always kind of going, well, why can Vincent see it but nobody else can? And then towards the end of the episode, you kind of just forget about that because it's not the purpose. It doesn't really matter. It's not really about that, because we learn actually that they are kind of similar, Vincent and the Crephaeus. They're both alone. They're both misunderstood. But both shunned by the people around them.
And that's why Vincent can see it, because it's a kindred spirit.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful. I mean, it also as well, there's some really good effects here with Matt being flung around and stuff, and you even get the scene where I assume it was wire work, where Tony's up in the air with the easel because he's stabbed it and stuff. Really good stuff. And
I like the bit where so Vincent shouts, "To your left," and then the doctor jumps to his left, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I meant right, my left." So it's like the whole thing of like stage right and left, and me and my boss make that mistake all the time.
The script's, considering it's quite like a deep episode, and it's not depressing, but it's very poignant. There is some amazing bits of comedy in there, especially with the back and forth between our three leads here. I mean, you get stuff about Amy joking about his beard and how ginger their kids would be if they were to have kids and stuff. And like you mentioned earlier on, John, that they're flirting back and forth. a lot of fun. You know, it's a lot of fun, and even like, you know, Matt gets involved there a little bit as well. With and like one line of dialogue which I wish stayed true was the Doctor, after he can't use the Sonic, goes, right, from now on I'm going to use it to screw screws and that's it. I wish that was the case. Boy, do I wish that was the case, especially in the later years.
If only Chibnall would watch this episode.
Yeah, if only Chibnall had seen this episode. Yeah, it just like it's just from start to finish, because there's no real 3-act structure with this one, because there's no villain. There's nothing to. They think the Crofeus is the villain, but there's no sort of like establishing the villain, middle and end, because really they unfortunately killed the Crofeus about 30 minutes in. There's a good 10-15 minutes at the end dedicated to just Vincent. And like you said earlier on the podcast, John, that scene where Vincent, he's like, I didn't mean to kill it. I just immediately, and his reaction as you see kind of like the shadow of blood and the Matt, brilliant acting.
But, you know, that's why the episode is called Vincent and the Doctor. It's not called like Attack of the Crofeus or something like that. You know, it's not about the Crofeus. The Crofeus is a narrative arc. It's a storytelling device.
Yeah.
If you like, the villain here, or the bad guy here, is Vincent's depression.
Yep. Exactly. It's just, and that's not a complaint. I'm just saying that's what some people would sometimes say. I don't think it's. I think it's actually brilliant that the Crofeus sort of gets dealt with very.
I think it would get in the way otherwise. I think it's important that it's there. But I think that by the time you're 30 minutes in, it's served its narrative purpose, and you have to tell the rest of that story.
Yeah, exactly. You also get a lot more comedic moments with like Vincent painting over famous paintings, to which we know are like priceless pieces of art that he just paints over and stuff. Also, the likeness that Tony has to Vincent is mind-boggling.
Yeah,
it is really something. Like when they like put the portrait next to his face, and it's like,
oh, it's perfect casting. It's absolutely perfect casting.
Obviously, like you said, mentioned earlier on, John, there's that poor girl gets killed, and there's that really sad scene where they're walking past, and it's just,
yeah, he's literally getting stoned by the villagers.
Yeah, it's just, like this episode builds and builds and builds until, yeah, like you say, you finally get those moments where you actually see Vincent's vulnerable side. Because obviously, when we meet him, he's a bit erratic. He's kind of a bit all over the place. He's drank a bit of coffee. He's shouting that nature calls to me. I hear it saying, heed my call. And he starts shaking the Doctor and stuff. And then you see him 5 minutes later, you see him crying in bed because he doesn't want Amy and the doctor to go. So then you see him 5 minutes later, seemingly okay again. And he even has like that wonderful conversation with Amy where he goes, I'm not sad. I'm happy. You know. And, you know, if Amy Pond can get through her demons so convincing, it's like the dialogue here is just impeccable.
I mean, you know, there's a real kind of, it's an interesting one because, you know, we are, as an audience, we've been tailored to believe that the Doctor can solve any problem. And this is one that he can't solve. You know, he hasn't. This is one that actually he's not been able, in spite of his best efforts, he's not been able to step in and change the course of history. And he knows it. He knows that's inevitable by the end. You know, he knows that actually Vincent's demons, he will succumb to them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's and that's quite sobering because it so very rarely happens that actually you get an ending that isn't what you would call a happy ending.
Yeah, but whilst at the same time, like you said, the dog, you know, it is also, as we get dog in the way that, hello, you know, it is a happy end. Woof. Hello, Fluff.
She also managed to mute me as well.
Fluff.
But yeah, no, it's a sad ending, but also what's being beautiful, like the Doctor says in that wonderful quote, you know, he did get to make a few changes, but I think it's time to move on to that scene. The heartbreaking scene. It's heartbreaking. It's also incredibly beautiful. It's going to be tricky for, I think, us to talk about because it gets me in tears every time. I might cry just talking about it. I don't know.
I think we all. I think most of us have crises of confidence in our lives. Most of us have situations where we want to feel not necessarily important, but we want to feel like we matter. We want to feel like we've made a difference to people's lives. And none of us really get the opportunity to find out if we do it or not. Here's Vincent being given the opportunity to find out the impact that he has left. You know, and I think anybody who has experienced depression in their life, as I have, would watch that and be like, I wish that I could be in that situation where, not on that scale, but in say like 100 years' time, you walk into a room and you hear people go, well, this is John Cook, this is what he did. And you realize you're never going to get that opportunity. It is a very difficult scene to watch and to analyze, but it's also an incredibly important one.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it puts the message out there of letting people know how important they are, letting people know what they mean to you, not keeping quiet on things, not putting people down, and not letting people suffer in silence.
Yeah, it's a scene that, like you say, John, I think everyone wants to know that they've had a positive impact on the world. And when you take someone like Vincent, who thinks the entire opposite, right? He doesn't just think that he's not accomplished anything. He also thinks that the entire world's against him. Nobody's there for him. Except I think, if I remember correctly, it's not really brought up in the episode too much, but he was very close with one particular relative, if I'm not mistaken, in the obviously real timeline that we live in today. So to go and see that and realize not only did he make a difference, he's also one of the most influential painters of all time, and his works have amazed people.
His works have amazed people. His works have brought so much joy and beauty into so many lives. They've brought sunshine into so many cloudy days for so many people. It's incredible.
And when you get, obviously, like you say, Chance's Bat Athlete comes in, and you get that shot of the eyes matching up with the poster on the wall, kind of a similar, I think this might be a similar photo to the ones actually behind you there. He walks in, it does like a nice change of focus.
You can kind of ignore the fact that he's kind of wondering where he's going, and he only realizes when he goes in and sees all these paintings, but he's walked past a massive sign on the door that says Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah. And then that's not even the best shot though, because you get that wonderful spinning shot where you just see him taking in everything. It's an interesting shot.
But it's not just all the paintings, it's all of the people that have come to see the paintings as well. So he's taking in the entire room, and it's not just his artwork, but it's the fact that this diverse range of people from across the world have come to see his artwork.
It's a beautiful scene, and then obviously you get the wonderful sort of monologue by Bill Nye over the top, who does a fantastic job. Does anyone know why he's not credited in this? Has there ever been like a reason given, or is it just a Doctor Who myth that we will never know the answer
to? It was certainly deliberate. I think because he's worked with Curtis on a few kind of projects and things, I think it was probably just a deliberate thing. I just thought it would be a very nice little thing to have Bill Nye come in as a uncredited cameo.
Yeah, there we go. It's wonderful. And this is where the heartbreak comes in, because Amy, like you said earlier on, Johnny, Amy is convinced that him seeing this will change his life. He even thinks so. He thinks he's going to step out tomorrow with his paintbrush, a new man. And unfortunately, we go back to the present day after that fact, and that isn't the case. And like you say, John, we all sit there and all, at this point, I was anyway earlier weeping, tears in eyes. And then the doctor, like you say, perfectly calms us down through Amy and says, look, just because he didn't survive longer doesn't mean we didn't make his life better. And we, like that line about the good things always cancel out the bad things, and it's wonderful. But actually, we do get a nice cherry on top of the cake, because not only do they get rid of the Crephaeus, but like you said, John, you get a lovely shot of like this golden globe pointing towards Amy as the camera steps back, kind of follows her, and then you see on the sunflower painting it says, "For Amy from Vincent."
I mean, technically you have to say on one of the sunflower paintings, because there are 5.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know my Van Gogh that very well. Okay,
I've seen a couple of them in the flesh, but there are 5.
I've seen 2 of them. That was at the National Gallery.
But then I must have seen 3 of them then, because I've seen a couple at the National and I've seen one in Amsterdam, and I think there's a couple in New York as well.
Because I think they change them around every so often.
Yeah.
Or they go on loan to other places.
Yeah. As I say, there's definitely 1 or 2 in Amsterdam. I think there's 1 or 2 at the National. I think there's definitely 1 in New York.
Yeah, this episode ends on a really, ends on a really positive note. Ends a positive note about life and how long you got, no matter what.
It ends on a positive note if you ignore the next time trailer.
Yeah, apart from James Corden popping up, which ruins it. But you can get the joke of, if we had kids, it'd be very ginger, the ultimate ginge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you can't just skip to Pandora Opens and Big Bang. You wish you could. Well, you can now. But back on air, you couldn't. But yeah, this episode is the most beautiful love letter to not only a historical character, but just to mental health, and you're not alone. And it also gives you validation to feel how you're feeling. And it's like you said, John, it's a disability very well. This episode, for me anyway, is possibly the most relatable Doctor episode of all time. Like, I can watch it. I think we can all see ourselves in some capacity within one of the characters, whether that be Vincent, whether it be Amy, whether it be the Doctor, whether that be the Crephaeus. It can be anyone, anything. There is just something magical about this episode.
You calling me a Crephaeus?
I'm not calling you a Crephaeus, no.
Cheeky bastard.
John Cook, the Crephaeus.
Cookfaeus.
Cookfaeus. But coming soon. No, I'm not making it. Imagine we actually sold Cookfaeus first. That'd be awful.
It's just lying there on the floor of the church, dying, and it's like it's trying to say to me, "What's it saying, Doctor?" It's just called me a cunt.
Oh, gosh. I also have to say as well, we didn't mention this, but before we wrap up, this episode also has one of the best cold opens as well, because obviously he pushes Amy into such, because this is a matter of life and death. We need to speak to Vincent van Gogh. Cut to the credit. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah, it's quality. It's quality. It's literally like you know, it's quality. I mean, this is the best for me, sort of, whatever you want to call them, the best sort of modern celebrity historical, if you like. And there's some decent competition for that, because obviously, you know, you've got the Charles Dickens episode, you've got the Rosa Parks episode, you've got the Mary Shelley episode, but I mean, this pisses all over them.
Yeah, no, this is for me. Like I said, if this will be in my all-time top 5, I'm going to do scores on the doors, but I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm going to be shocked if it's anything under 10s across the board here. But yeah, I'm going to give this one a 10.
Yeah,
I'd give it 11 if I could.
Yeah, it's a 10 from me. I mean, it's like, it's not only a 10, it's like the most stone cold 10 you're ever going to get. Nothing's ever going to shift me from that.
It's a 10 from me, decorated in sunflowers.
You know,
Nice.
if I could give it a 10 star, I would.
There we go. Well, are we ready to find out? Well, we know next month's going to be a Dalek 2-parter, but I need to. Oh no, it's not. I can't screen share. There's a problem with the Matrix. We're just going to get that fixed, everyone.
I allowed you to record local files. I forgot to let you to screen share.
It's all right, because normally you don't need to let me anyway.
I forgot.
Well, we got. Okay.
Hey, Android invasion.
Okay. So there we go. Android invasion is what it'll be.
More blind representation.
The biggest sharks jumping Doctor Who.
We've been through the biggest shark jumping Doctor Who.
Okay, guys. So that means next month will be the Capaldi story. Which is familiar. What's the first one called?
Magician's Apprentice.
Magician's Apprentice. Then which is familiar. And then the month after that will be the Android invasion.
I think, I think as it's a Tom Baker story, you should extend the invite to Mr. Mamoon.
Yes, I shall. So it's exciting.
It probably won't go out on the 6th of July.
No, it won't, because this is going out. No, it won't, because this will be going out on the 6th of June. Yeah, 6th of June. And then,
well, I mean, if you've not seen the Android invasion, Alex, the 6th of July is the date that it's set on.
I've seen the Android invasion. It's one of the.
I mean, if you wanted to put it out on the 6th of July, you could always flip it with the Capaldi 2-part.
Do you want to do that just for fun?
No, it's your podcast. I'm just suggesting it as an idea.
There we go. We can do that for fun. So next month will be the Android invasion, and then we'll come back with the Capaldi Dalek 2-part, just for a bit of fun.
So we've got new series and then classic, and then we'll go back to new again.
Which is a nice way to do it.
Yeah, that's what to do it. But that's it for this week, guys. Thank you guys all so much for listening. Hopefully we weren't too positive and boring. If we were, then that's your loss, because it's a great episode. So yeah, please do go check out Owen at Dr. Disco 63. You want to check out the Who shop, and they've got a new T-shirt which Owen is wearing right now.
Yeah, hang on, you can see it. So features Sea Devils. There we go.
There are people
genuinely
who
the best Sea Devil representation we've seen this year.
And lovingly designed by yours truly.
And if you're audio listener, it's got 2 Sea Devils on it. It's very good. I think it's going for $24.99, is it?
Yeah,
not?
and if anybody from BBB is listening, we do have Owen does have the legal rights to sell that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
From the BBC and everything.
Mm.
So there we go. You can follow John at johnboy_cook. And you follow me at AlexKing_Dom. You can follow the show at the Thomas Pod, so you never miss an episode, or you can hit that bell on YouTube and you'll get notified anyway. It's really up to you. Yes, you can ding my bell. Which there you go. Chumleys. Yes.
Ring my bell.
Take care, everyone. I'll let John say good night to us all, or good morning, because it comes out in the morning if you're watching it straight away. But yes, I'll let John say goodbye this week.
Good night. God bless. Don't have nightmares. Do sleep well. Ring my bell. Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
My ding-a-ling.